It's our November installment of the Enterprise Excellence Group. So thank you for joining us. I'm Nancy Calder. I've been in the Dynamics space for most of my career, actually CRM since the 90s, and Dynamics CRM when it started in the early 2000s. Very interested in helping our community understand how to have great careers in Dynamics and also how to implement successfully, which is why this meetup started. So hopefully everybody can see my screen, and we're going to, I think I changed it up a little bit. I'm going to show what our agenda is for today first. So before we actually start with the formal agenda, Madison will give you an orientation on the Dynamics user group and some of the events we have going, that type of thing. So we'll start there. Then we're going to dive into having Ashley, for those of you that overheard us, we want to talk about how do you create a successful D365 program, and using specifically looking at project operations and how her organization themselves as a consulting firm use that. And then we're going to have Tanya, who's part of our committee. We're going to have, as we go forward, a regular item where we're going to look at various ISVs to help introduce you to ISVs and how they help solve business problems and how you might use them to fill gaps that you might be having in your implementation. And then we're going to continue to have an ongoing topic around sort of favorite features and favorite things that we have available to us. So we have Joe Thomas here today to talk about. There's, I don't know if you've seen it, but FastTrack has published a project implementation portal along with the business process catalog, those types of things. So Microsoft's starting to give us lots of great tools to ensure that we're driving success with our clients and that customers are having success in doing their D365 implementations. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A and networking. All right. So Madison, over to you, and I will drive the slides for you. Just tell me when to go to next one.
Awesome. I am super excited, and I will go fairly quickly so we can get to our great speakers for the day. My name is Madison Zulowitz. I am the event coordinator here at Doug. So I'm here to just tell you a little bit about Doug and do a quick introduction. So Doug is a free community for users, implementers, and resellers of Microsoft business applications. We mainly focus on Microsoft Dynamics 365, GP, and Power Platform. And we are essentially a community for users to help grow and excel in their personal and professional careers. Go ahead to the next slide, Nancy. So our rules of engagement is we essentially ask that these meetups are kept to be solely educational. We do not want any sales pitches in these meetings. They are solely for those attending and those presenting to gain educational experience and network with each other. We can go to the next one. Awesome. Dynamics User Group has multiple different programs. So we have online forums, webinars, we have conferences. We actually just did our virtual conference yesterday for those of you that could make it. Saw Sharon on the call. I was able to sit in on her presentation yesterday, and it was great. So if you didn't have a chance to come to our virtual conference, those presentations will be posted on YouTube in about a month. Which brings us to our YouTube channel, where our virtual conference will be posted, as well as our local meetups that are held virtually. We post meetings like this on our YouTube channel. So whether you missed one of the enterprise meetups and want to go back and catch up on it, it will be posted on our meetup. Or if you were curious about another meetup around the world, always great educational sessions posted. We have our 2024 and 2025 regional meetups. So we have two that are coming up pretty soon. Canada, we have our Canadian regional on November 26, 2024, which Nancy's been a huge part of. So we really, really appreciate all of her help with planning that. And we actually need to update this. We are close to about 180 registrations. So tickets are selling out fast. This is a free event. If you were interested in coming, I would definitely suggest signing up soon because we have a max capacity of 200 tickets. We also have our Southeast Regionals coming up in January 15th of 2025. This will be in Tampa, Florida. So super excited about that. It will be nice for all of you Northerners to come down to Florida in January. And we've also posted our 2025 regionals. Nancy, would you mind going back to one slide? No, you're good. There we go.
Yep.
I didn't know the dates by heart. So we have a Northeast Regional that will be in Massachusetts during February 2025. We have this regional meetup may or may not be Pacific Northwest. We're still trying to figure out the final details, but we will have one in March of 2025. We'll be in Colorado in April, Ghana in July, Kenya in July, Ohio in August, Texas in September, and back to Canada in November next year. So we are super, super excited about our 2025 regionals and hope that if you were able to make it, you can come. They're a little bit larger in scope than these local meetups. Just a full day of educational sessions with multiple different tracks and lots of networking opportunities. And then we have our 2025 DynamicsCon coming up. This is our largest conference of the year. This will be May 13th to the 16th of 2025 in Chicago, Illinois. And session submissions are now open. So if you are interested in speaking at this event, definitely submit your presentation. We are always looking for new speakers. A great way to share your knowledge with the community. And I will pass it back over to Nancy, and good luck to all of our speakers today. I'm super excited to listen in.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks everybody. Get your submissions in. I did mine yesterday. Super easy process. Great event to speak at as well and be part of. It's an awesome community that we're part of. So Ashley, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think you're going to share your screen, but thank you for joining us today. And if you're ready to go, then yep, off you go.
Yeah, sounds
Thank
good. I also want to reiterate what Madison and Nancy said about getting submissions in. I got mine in as well, but we would love to hear from new speakers. So if you're interested, and then also excited to see you guys in Chicago next year. All right, so we talked about this a little bit. If you were on in the meeting, early in the meeting, I'm going to be talking today about project operations. Kind of giving an overview. I guess I could go to the agenda page. We're going to talk about what project operations is, and who should use it. Like, who is the ideal client to utilize project operations, and then also want to highlight some of the cool features. And then I want to show a demo. So we, as a consulting company, Elevate Digital, we support Power Platform and Dynamics 365 implementations. We actually use project operations solely for managing our sales cycle process and for managing all of our projects. So we do it all in PO. So I'd love to kind of showcase and talk people through, we eat our own dog food here, right? We're encouraging our customers to do it, but we do it ourselves. So just a little bit about me to start with. My name is Ashley Steiner. I am the Director of Business Applications at Elevate Digital. Like I said, we are an implementation partner. I'm also a Microsoft MVP, and I have a podcast called The Awkward Silence with my good friend, Ed Gonzalez. And then I've been working in this space for over 14 years. It's actually going to be coming up on 15 early next year. So feels a little crazy to be able to say that. So let's get into today's topic. So talking about project operations. So what is project operations? It used to be called project service automation. So for those people that were potentially on that product or are more familiar with it, it really is, I don't want to say it's an upgrade because it really is very different. There were a lot of rigid processes within PSA that you just could not get around and were not able to successfully, kind of integrate your own process. Microsoft did a really good job re-implementing project operations and allowing some flexibility with your different processes. There are 3 different deployment types. Project operations is one of these unique first-party apps where it crosses Dynamics 365 CE, or traditionally what we would call CRM, and the ERP side specifically within F&O or FNSCM. So there are 3 different types of ways that you can deploy the product. The light deployment is solely within customer engagement, within CE. So you are interacting fully with project operations. And then if you want to have any sort of integration to your ERP system for like invoicing, contractors, things like that, you would build a custom integration. We've worked with a lot of companies that use Business Central, so they would not be able to use one of the ERP options because it is only offered today with F&O. I suspect that will change, that they will do something with BC in the future. But the light deployment is solely, you use all of the features completely out of CE. The other 2 options, you do integrate with F&O or use F&O as part of the process. The resource non-stock scenarios it is kind of a hybrid. You do some parts, you do like the project management, and time entry and things like that within the CE platform. And then all of the back end, like invoicing, contractor management, all of that is done in F&O. And there is an integration between the 2 to make that process seamless. The last one, the soft or production order scenarios, this is where you would potentially have some types of physical things that you're selling in addition to services, and that is 100% fully within finance and operations. So depending on who you are and what kind of business that you are, it would depend on which option is the best for you. I will tell you at Elevate, we are using the light deployment. We do not have F&O internally. So we'll only be focusing on what's in the CE side of project operations in this conversation. So just to talk a little bit about, where does PO fit inside of your process? Within project ops, as a project manager, you can fully manage your entire project. It actually embeds Project Online directly within PO, which makes it, I think a lot of project managers really like Project Online, right? They can create tasks, assign them out, do timelines, deadlines, and you actually work directly with Microsoft Project, the online version, within PO. So what PO does is it can pull all of that together from the project management, from like the tasks, things like that, resource management. So depending on, who you have to work on projects, capacity, things like that. We're going to walk through some of that today and how we do that internally. Also the financials and accounting. Some of the features that we really like in PO is estimations, and projecting where the profitability will be on a project, and also getting, like those alerts of like red or amber, on, if a project is leaning towards, not being as profitable as we would want it to be. We can see that just right away as people are entering their time. So it's not, you don't have to wait for everyone to submit time and then pull it into Excel and do all of that. It's actually just right within the system. I also will say I love things to be interactive. I tend to just talk really fast and keep going. I love talking about CRM. I'm a huge nerd. So please interrupt if you have questions at any time or post them in the chat. Would love to have this be as interactive as possible.
Hey, Ashley, it's Nancy. Do we want to ask people to put in the chat if they've ever used project operations before to manage projects, or what tools they're using today to manage their projects? Maybe we
love
can
it.
Conversation.
Yes, please share if you've used project operations in the past, or if you are using a tool for project management. Would love to hear what tools y'all are using. There are a lot of great tools out there, so would love to hear what people are using. So to talk about who should use project operations, so maybe you're thinking about using it, you're seeing, you're thinking about, what would be the best way for my teams to manage their projects. First of all, project operations is not an easy lift. It is, I don't want to say it's difficult. It is time consuming. Project operations does not take a lot of configuration. It's not like sales, right? It's not like when you implement sales and you add fields and processes and business process flows. But there is a pretty heavy lift on data entry, right? Because you've got to put in all of your costs and your resources, time, and their skills, and your projects and financials. I mean, there's a lot of, I would say, setup, but once it's in there, it runs really seamless. So I don't want to say it's I hate to say it's a heavy lift, but it's a lot of upfront work to get all this awesome benefit at the end of it. So who is project operations ideal for? Professional services companies, consulting like us at Elevate, construction companies. If you think about it, they have projects from building site to building site, and they're managing, contractors and, all of their resources for the various stages of the construction. So those are good fits. And then project-centric industries, we've also seen that legal or law firms, because a case is kind of like a project, right? And so we've seen it be really successful in those types of organizations or environments. Would love to hear in the chat as well if you found success with other industries, but these are the ones that we've seen be most successful using project operations.
So somebody's mentioned, sorry, Ashley, somebody's mentioned
go ahead.
Asana and DevOps together. Do they want to come off mute and share a little bit on that? Or I wasn't aware of Asana. I just looked it up. It looks kind of interesting. Does it integrate with DevOps?
Hey, this was me, Mike. No, it does not. Actually, it takes someone who understands both and looking at both sides and reflecting, mirroring each other. DevOps is more for the internal IT team, and business users would never go into DevOps. Asana is more end user facing, right? And giving visibility to everyone, including the stakeholders and senior leadership.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out, is there's not a native integration with project operations and DevOps either. It might be something that's on the roadmap. I have not seen it on the roadmap with Microsoft, but the same would exist in a project operations. We actually use both of them, and our project manager has to kind of live between both systems. But exactly what you said, like our developers, our consultants are in DevOps, and they're only entering their time in project operations. All of our business users are using PO only. So, but I think that it's probably very similar to how you're using Asana and DevOps.
Yes.
Cool.
All right, so just a couple of other things to consider, like who should use project operations. So like I said, anybody who engages in project-based work. If you're looking for a better resource allocation, I remember working at previous consulting companies where you have this like giant spreadsheet of all of your projects, and then you have everyone's name, and you're just kind of fiddling around with numbers in this Excel, and it's just crazy and insane. And might have an open rec that needs a developer for 4 hours a week over the next 10 weeks, and trying to find who has the capacity to do that. PO does that automatically for you, where you can put in that open rec with the skills that are needed, and it will find the appropriate person for you. So pretty cool. It automates a lot of that for you. If you want an integrated financial management, like I said, it does a great job in showing your costs, your revenue, profitability on each and every project. And again, it's not something that you have to wait to export to Excel. It does happen automatically within the system. If you want to improve your client engagement, there are cool features I'm going to show today with Copilot that will streamline some of those like status updates, where your PM does not have to spend time then drafting those from scratch or putting those together. It'll just automatically put all of the information at that current point in time into a status update. And then if you also want to streamline operations, so from where you build the contract all the way to billing the customer, that can happen in this one same system. And then we've even seen with clients that integrate it with BC, they'll just take that invoice and move it over to BC. Obviously the F&O would work, pretty seamless as well, but you can go from contract to invoice directly within the system. I always like to say that Project Ops is not for everyone, so I do want to call out maybe who should not use project operations. I would never try to convince somebody to use something that's not a good fit for them. So if you are a company that has really simple project management needs, maybe you are working internally with just different departments and one project at a time. Maybe you have one resource per project. Maybe you're so small that you don't even have project managers. Maybe people are PMing themselves. This would be probably too much of a lift to find the real benefit. If you have limited project-based work, obviously project is in the name. So if you're not running projects, it's probably not an ideal. Budget constraints, there is a minimum of 20 licenses when you roll out project operations. As far as I know, that has not changed. Microsoft changes their licensing every month, but last time I checked, it was a minimum of 20 licenses. So if you have less than 20 people, it's obviously something that you'd want to consider. If you have great systems in place, you don't want to fix something that's not broken, right? So great call out with Asana. If you have Asana and DevOps and it's meeting your needs and the users are really happy with it, then it could, why would you switch something? And then also resistance to change. If your employees are really happy and they like what you're using, sometimes changing tools is just not worth the unhappiness. I always talk about the intangibles of how happy your users are, which I feel is more important sometimes than the cost of things, as you want to really pay attention to the happiness. There's a great question here is, wouldn't it be included in one of the partners package? It would be. So in a partners package, it would definitely be included. And then you can also do a project operations add-on for like time entry, like a limited user. So if you're using sales, and then you need, or if you have the project operations and you want to do like, I think it's called the add-on license or whatever it's called, where and obviously if you need somebody just entering time, like we have consultants who do nothing within project ops except submit time. That's like a team license in sales. It's $10 a month. So it is, yeah. So there are budget constraints and things like that. But yes, for partner packages, there are options.
And Ashley, for you guys, do you have like internal use rights to use this yourselves as a implementer?
What do you, I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand the question.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
If you're a Microsoft partner, you often get access to, like when I was with ADX Studio, we had our own internal implementation of Dynamics that was part of our internal use rights as part of our package as a partner.
Correct. Yep. And so we have that with, we integrate sales and project operations, and we also have customer insights that we use as part of all of that.
Right. So you're not just like, as a partner, you don't necessarily have to pay for those licenses. You're getting it as part of your use rights. We
do have to pay for some of them, just the way that the packages are built. Yeah. So we get like the instance, and then you get so many licenses, but I think it depends on what level of partner you are as well as how many you get. So, but yeah, we do definitely, we pay for some of our licenses. I know that for a fact.
Makes sense. Thanks.
I don't manage that though. I could get answers on it. Luckily I'm not in charge of the budget. Someone else is.
Yeah, it's all good.
And then just high level, wanted to talk about some of the features that I think are really beneficial in Project Ops before we jump into a demo of some of the, I picked out 4 things that I think are, that we use every day that I think, that I'm really excited to talk about. So the different features of the system obviously is that sales and customer engagement integration. So you can manage your leads and opportunities, build your contracts. What I love about the integration with the sales side is you can kind of start to, as you are working the sale, as a salesperson, you're building the opportunity, you can start to build the project and start to kind of reserve resources. So I know that I have a project coming up and I'm going to need, 5 different types of people. I need a PM, 3 consultants, and a developer. I can go in and build that, and I can soft book people. It's also great to tell your customer, hey, you know what, we have 4 weeks, we're going to need a 4-week lead time to be able to start your project, because that's when the resources will come available. You can know all of that directly within the system. Obviously, project planning and tracking is the core feature. They do utilize Projects Online. They'll embed it into project operations. We'll show you that as part of the demo. But you can set up your tasks. You can set timelines. You can also track, you can set your timeline. Maybe you're running 3-week sprints. We run 3-week sprints. And then you've dedicated, 20 hours to something over those 3 weeks. As people enter their time, you can see if you're over or under budget as well, which is fantastic. It's just real time in the system for you. Resource management as a manager is huge for me because I can go in and see if my resources are being utilized, underutilized, or overutilized. It does add really fun colors of red when people are over capacity. So it calls out those things immediately. But it also helps me when I work with my sales team for them to understand, what that lead time is to start a project based on the resources that we have available. It also gives me a heads up personally of, okay, I have somebody maybe that's going on to the bench because a project is wrapping up, and what can we get them on, in a 2-week period potentially between projects. So it really helps me make sure that my resources are being utilized to the maximum capacity as possible. I've talked a lot about time entry. We do all of our time entry within project operations. I would love to say that we do it for expenses, but we don't. We're a small company, so we still use Excel. Someday maybe. But what's great about that, like I've said over and over, is it's all real time. We have a Power BI dashboard actually that we've built to pull in our actual time entry, and then even before it's submitted. So you can pull reports on what people are putting in for time entry even before they submit it. So we can start to kind of track and see, if we're getting close to a budget, we can see midweek where people are before they even submit their time. And then obviously the financial management part of it, where you can do budgeting. It'll automatically show you your budget, and it'll give you an analysis of, whether or not you're going to, if you're in your margin for the project. It does cost tracking, obviously, with the time entry, and then revenue recognition. So obviously, as a company who we need to realize revenue, we're not selling like a product, right? We're not selling widgets. You need to recognize that revenue as the project is ongoing. I'm going to kind of go through these slides a little bit quickly. Nancy, I think it looks like I have 10 minutes left. Is that correct? Just want to do a time check.
It's going to be up to you because our next speaker is having some technical difficulties, so she's not going to be presenting. So you have a little bit more time if you want to take it. It's up to you.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Thank you. So this is just a breakdown of kind of that sales and customer engagement, how you work with your sales all the way to that project and contract. All of this can be done within the system, and you can start to build out, like I said, you can start to reserve resources. And it really creates this seamless interaction between your sales team and your operations team that are running the projects. These screenshots are pretty small. We are going to jump into an actual demo, so it'll look a little bit better, but want to just talk about some of these features, like I said, that I find really cool. You can see in here that this does look just like Project Online, and you have, your finish, your deadline, how many days. So we have 20 days in here, which is a 3-week sprint. And then, how many hours we're dedicating to a specific task. And then we can track again real time how much effort has been completed. And it'll tell us whether, what percent complete we are in an item. It'll even go over 100%. So if we've spent more hours than necessary, it'll kind of give us a warning. The other great thing is it'll automatically close a task when you reach that maximum time. So if I've put in 20 hours on something, once somebody bills 20 hours, it'll close that task, so that our PM is aware that it's taking more time than we anticipated, and they have to manually go in and reactivate that task. But it's a great way to manage, how much time things are taking to finish, and if we've estimated what our work will be effectively. This is just another way to see the timelines, depending on how you like to look at information. The previous one was a grid. This one is looking at it over time and kind of seeing the relationships. So if you have in a sprint, if you have items that are related to each other but need to be completed sequentially, you can see here that we have some things that can start at the same time, but this task here can't start until this one is finished. So our project managers can make sure that things are getting finished on time. Okay, we have 3 weeks. Let's make sure this first task gets done in the first 3 to 4 days, so the next task can start and still get completed on time. So yeah, just another way, a Gantt chart where you can view the tasks. What we really like about the project delivery is we can see all of this information. You can see here the overall project status. So really easily right up front, we can see if it's red, yellow, or green. We can see if those projects are on time. We also have an overall estimate here of the whole project. So how many hours are we expecting? How many are completed? And then the percent complete as well. So just really easy access. We don't have to like put this into Excel manually. We can export it to Excel, which obviously we do. We have some financial people who love Excel. It'll never go away. But makes it really easy for us to be able to pull those numbers on the fly, when our CFO comes calling. The resource requirements, this is the thing that I probably use the most to make sure that my team is being utilized. So within your resources, you create a resource for all of your folks that are on projects. You can identify skills that they have. So you can see here, we did a really terrible job of blurring this out. Dan, clearly that says Dan. Dan is clearly a SharePoint resource. And so we can add in all of these different skills. And then we can also rate, what kind of skill level does Dan have with this? And so when we're looking for a resource that, needs to have advanced SharePoint migration skills, Dan will come up if he has the capacity. So that being able to do the open requirements and looking for resources with the skills, that actually came out, I think in May. We had a Microsoft person jump into our demo at DynamicsCon in May and showcase it. It had come out just the week before. So that is relatively new.
Hey, Ashley, on this topic, how do you keep
Oh, I think I lost you, Nancy.
does the matching right?
Oh, sorry, I lost the middle part of your question.
Sorry.
Sorry. No, you're good.
How do you keep the skills up to date so it knows what the right people are, like as they might take their certifications or get new project experience? You got any recommendations on how people would do that?
Yeah, we actually allow our staff to input their own. We obviously will go in and add the rating, right? So if somebody gets a certification or does training or learns, maybe they're like you said on a project. So we allow our staff to go in and add their skills. And then we have a dashboard where we go in and we rate what we think the rating is based on that person. And I think we use beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So pretty simple rating. And then yeah, so that's how we did it, because we want people, it feels kind of cool when you get to add a new skill to your own list. I mean, not everyone does that. I think some people, have somebody, we're not big enough to have a resource manager that only, it's just me, right, managing my resources. We don't have somebody that's just in charge of only that, because I'm obviously consulting as well. But yeah, we really like it, having people be able to identify their own. So that's how we do it.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the resource page. Next, getting into cost and variance. So this is definitely more on the project manager side. I have a counterpart who manages a lot of this, but you can see, and we're going to jump into the demo. I know these screenshots are pretty terrible, but within here, you can even see, the duration, and you can track how far along you are with the project. And what we have blurred out here is the cost. I do have a demo environment that I'm going to be pulling up for the demo today, so you'll be able to see all of this. But per task, you'll be able to see how things are progressing and if you're making the profit that you're looking for. And then resource reconciliation. So on a specific project, you'll be able to see if you were utilizing the resources effectively. So I can go in and say, hey, I need somebody half time over the next, 8 weeks on a project, but maybe they're only putting in 10 hours of time. So that gives me the ability to go in and say, okay, do I actually need to give them more projects, or are we just not assigning them enough to do on this project? So I can, week by week, I can come in here and see how my resources are being utilized. And then obviously here, I love the colorings. It's just super easy for me to find the booking shortage, and then also the excesses. So clearly we did not budget for somebody to be on this project at all. after a certain point. And then the resource allocation, this is where I live and breathe in PO, other than entering my own time. So this allows me to see how my resources are allocated. You'll see that you can see it on like the project level, where I can see that, this person is on a specific project over weeks, months, however long it is. And then also what capacity they're at. And again, I love the colors here. I can see that this resource is over allocated 4 weeks in a row. So that allows me to just at a high level say, okay, do I need to go in and make a decision on pulling them off of something? Can I get somebody else into that project to help them? That kind of thing. So it's pretty, it makes it really easy for me to see who is over and under booked on their allocation so that we can get them working effectively.
And this is across all projects, is that right, Ashley?
Yes, you can break it down per project, or you could see across all. You can do both.
Yeah, because I used to manage, I used to use Microsoft Project to try to do all of this together, and I was trying to import things, and I found it very tedious. So this is a lovely view of being able to look at people across all of their projects that they're working on to, determine if they're over allocated.
Yeah, and again, this screenshot is pretty terrible, but you can see here, there's a name and then what their capacity, what percentage they're allocated, and then the big bars underneath are which projects they're actually assigned to. So yeah, and it does it automatically. I will say that the PO allocation board is not fantastic. It's better, like you said, it's better than what we've had before with other Microsoft products. But what does have a really great resource allocation board is field service. So if you by chance have both products, you could potentially use the field service one. I always like to show the PO one because field service is a different product. But if you have both, I would recommend using the field service one. What that means to me, though, is I'm guessing eventually Project Ops will switch to that newer board that's easier to work with. So what's really fun about Microsoft is they're putting a ton of money into field service right now. And because there are a lot of overlaps between the two products, Project Operations is going to benefit from that.
Yeah, I think they're getting even closer because the engineering area that looks after field service is moving into ERP.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and that was because field service now has a native integration with BC. So I know that they're putting a lot of resources and efforts toward field service. Not that today's conversation is about that, but it's nice to see that but other areas can benefit. The other thing that Elevate works a lot with is contractors. Obviously, as a small consulting company, we do bring in contractors from time to time to fill out our team. And we are able to fully manage our contractors within the system, all the way from what their cost is to what we bill our customers, especially depending on the skill. If they're an advanced SharePoint migration, but only an intermediate, other things within SharePoint, SharePoint developer perhaps, we potentially make, they may charge a different rate depending on what they're doing versus also then what we charge the customer. So we can manage both of those items, and then it'll also work within the T&M and fixed fee contract types so that we can see how the contractors are playing into that. And that will happen automatically, right? Because if you have a full-time staffed employee, they're going to make the same regardless. But with our contractors, they're only going to get paid if they're billing time. So it makes it pretty easy to be able to track their the cost of a contractor, and then also the revenue that we're making on a contractor. And I think last but not least is time entry. I will say the time entry is not the best time entry system that I've ever used. I've definitely used worse. There are a lot of great apps on the App Source that make the time entry board just look a lot easy. It's just more user friendly. So if it is something that you're going to invest in for time entry, it does everything that you need it to, but it's not always the best. What I will say is what I wish was in other parts of CE was you can actually click in something here and delete the time. And it just deletes the record for you. I don't know why they can't do that elsewhere. It's gotta love it sometimes, but like you see here, you can pick your project, pick your task, and then you can put in all of your different time. And then, as you're entering it into the system, a manager like myself can see, how that's shaping up with the project, whether it's been submitted or not. I do like to talk about the limitations because obviously there are some limitations. This has actually changed. This is a screenshot that I took before Scottish Summit, and while I was at Scottish Summit, they changed it. So the maximum total tasks for a project was 500. It is now 1,000. So that did increase. I work with some of our clients have projects that have, thousands of tasks. And so that has been a huge improvement. But that was the only one that I've seen be a total, kind of be a deal breaker or an issue. But that one, they are looking to increase it over 1,000 as well. So just some other limitations I always like to bring up. The other limitation I like to talk about is it uses Project Online, not Project for the desktop. And there are features and functionalities within Project for Desktop that are not available online. I don't know if they're going to add those features to online. So that's also something to take into consideration, is that Project Online does not have all the same features. Are there any questions before I jump into the demo?
Hey, Ashley, you mentioned Project Online, but there are like P1 to P4 or P5 versions, right? Which one are you referring to?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I can find out from my project manager.
Okay, sorry for that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
Yeah, you mentioned also time entry, maybe not the best, but I think somewhere in May, I think it was in Colorado during the DAG event, there was a presentation by someone from Microsoft, and they were talking about using co-piloted voice to allow consultants to enter time. Is that already GA? Have you seen that?
It is GA. I have not found it to be very helpful because you have to give it very, very precise instructions. And by the time you give it the precise instructions, you could probably have entered it yourself. It will probably get better as everything, right? Copilot's new. I mean, it's only been around a year, right? So it only has to go up from here, right? That's the only direction it can go. So I haven't found it to be super helpful quite yet, but I obviously, as they continue to develop it, I think it'll get better.
Thank you.
Yep. I hope no one from Microsoft's not. Copilot's great. So this is our system. This is a sandbox environment, so all these numbers are made up. No worries here. So this is just a sampling of the projects. What you can see here, just right off the bat, is you can see how many hours we're estimating and then how many hours are completed. So you can see this one took 100 more hours than we thought. So we did a pretty bad estimation on that. And then it'll also tell you the percentage complete. And the percentage complete is not based on the hours, it's based on the tasks that are completed. So obviously you can tell with this one is pretty terrible with how I put in the numbers, is it's only 80% complete and we're 100 hours over. But just right off the bat, you can see this just right up front. You don't have to do any sort of calculations. You don't have to pull things into Excel. It does have all of these things right off the bat. So the first couple of things that I wanted to talk about actually is the task area of the project. So this is where you're going to see Project Online directly within project operations. So when you pull up the tasks page, it's going to pull in, and you can see there, it says project. It's pulling in, it's just embedding directly in there. And sorry, sometimes when I share my screen, and because this is a sandbox environment, it does take a second to load. But what you can see here is, once you do hit your hours, it'll mark it as 100% complete. And we had to manually reopen this one so that we could go over the estimated hours. But, you can add in here, you can assign multiple resources to a task. You can say how long the task is going to take, and then also indicate how many hours. So over 15 days, we're going to spend 20 hours on this. And then you can see how much time you have left versus how much time you spent. So what I really like about this is it's just right here on the fly. I can look at without any sort of manipulation by myself. It's just there for me. On the home. Oh, yes, please.
I got a question for you. Again, in project, I would often have like different templates of you know, if I was doing a portals project, I would do this. If I was doing a customer service project, I would have these, you know, like predefined tasks that I generally do every time. Can Proj Ops handle that to, you know, take repeatable WBSs and import them?
Yes, it can. So what you would do is you would just create a project and then call it template. And then you have this copy project, and the copy project copies everything over. So if you had, like you said, you have a specific kind of project, maybe we're doing a sales implementation, we do it the same way every time. We can add in our tasks and copy the project, and it'll carry everything over.
Great, that's awesome.
The other thing is you can open it in project itself. I'm not going to do that because it might freeze the system because it's a sandbox environment. But, you know, as a project manager, I might prefer to work in project. So you can actually view your WBS in project as well, or rather than going through PO. What we have found though is that you can't build it out in project and then bring it into PO. You do have to build it out in PO to see it in project. Here on the homepage is where you'll see the information. Again, as people enter their time, that's where the actuals are going to come from. You'll be able to see, you know, how people are entering their time and putting it in. What I'm going to pull out. So the next thing I want to talk about is Copilot. So I'm glad you brought it up because we do use a couple of the Copilot features. The first one that we use is the status reports. So rather than having our PM manually, you know, write up a status report every week, we do use this feature where it pulls up and it creates that report. Now we copy and paste and kind of put it into the format that we want to use, but it will pull in all of the, you know, necessary information or some similar information that what you would put into a status report. Something that I have found very interesting is that you could see we were clearly over budget on this project, and it says green up here. So there are some limitations with Copilot. It does not recognize or read that it's over budget, but it is editable. So I can come in here and change it to red if I wanted to use this report itself exactly. So I could go ahead and hit download report, and I can also say, you know, whether it's over or under budget. So some of this is editable because, you know, it's not right. AI is not perfect. So it does allow you to come in here and make changes. But you can see here, it does give a really good progress report on your resources, how they're spending their time, and it does give summaries as well. So this is something that we are using internally and externally to send out our status reports. Just save some time. The other thing in the Copilot is the task plan. This is one of those other things, kind of like the time entry, that we have not found as useful, but keep trying to see how it gets better. The task plan will add additional tasks based on the kind of project that it is. So obviously over time, as you add projects in, it will learn, right, what kind of tasks you put into the system for the project. And I did actually add it to this one. So these are all the tasks we created. And then you'll see down here at the bottom, starting at line 47, these are the tasks that Copilot created for me based on the information that it has in the system on the kind of project, the opportunity that it's related to, and the account. So it does look into all of that information and comes up with what it thinks the tasks could or would be for this project. I think it's a great place to start, especially if you have not if you're building projects from scratch. We carry over all of our user stories. This is where we do a manual effort between DevOps and Project Ops, is we bring over all of our user stories. We import them as tasks, so we wouldn't necessarily use these, but I think it is a great place to start if you're not used to starting projects. The last feature that I really like personally is the risk assessment. So risk is something that's part of every project, right? You might have things that come up. You can manually create the risks, but based on the project itself and other projects that you've done that are similar, Copilot will recommend risks, that could come up potentially as part of the project. Oh, and I've reached my maximum of characters. So you gotta love demos, right? It worked for me yesterday when I was prepping this. But I think I actually created it on another project. So let's go ahead and pull that one up. I guess maybe it didn't save. But what it'll do is it'll create risks that are pretty common for the type of project. It'll look to other projects that are similar. Again, it's only learning from your same environment, right? It's not going to pull in from other resources, right? It's only going to pull in risks. I will say the risks are pretty generic. But again, if you use it and you add risks over time, it's only going to learn more about what you would find, in the system.
That's
Nancy,
awesome.
it is. The risks is pretty cool, because sometimes you don't know where to start, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, it's a good thing, and it will definitely learn over time. We're seeing that in multiple areas of Copilot in terms of how helpful it's going to be in Dynamics implementations. Is it's about the data, right, that you have in there. So it's pros and cons that you have to build up the knowledge for it to give back, but it's also that it's not taking data from somewhere else and giving you hallucinations.
yes.
Right.
And I think that's probably a good point with the time entry, right? You have to know how to prompt Copilot to give you a good execution, right? So if you're not just using, like, this is a native Copilot built in the system, it's going to do the same thing. But, if you're querying data like your time entry, or if you're a salesperson saying, oh, when is my opportunity going to close? Or what do I have coming up today? You do have to write those in a certain way. So I think that once you do find the appropriate prompt, making sure that it's documented and sharing with the team. Because again, the more people that start to use that prompt, the system's going to learn and it's going to start to give you the correct response. So I probably just lost patience with it. And that's why the time entry one didn't work for me, because I was like, I could just do this faster myself rather than spending the time to have the system learn.
Yeah. But that's awesome. So, the rest of the people on the call, any comments, feedback? How does it relate to what you're doing today? Does it give you a good sense how to use it for an implementation if you were going to be inclined to do that, or at least have the types of things that you should be tracking in an implementation?
Again, sorry, me again.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
The status report, using it for both internal and external, do you tell Copilot to specifically say, include this much information for external stakeholders, or how does that work? I mean, I don't know, you don't want to show them how profitable your project is, right?
Right. So there are two different types of reports. It actually gives you an internal and an external option. And only certain people that are part of the project can run the internal one. So like if you're a project manager, or, you give those permissions to people to be able to run the internal, and it does give you, it is a standard template. So it doesn't change the content. Like, it'll always give you a summary. It'll give you the external one. It'll give you where your resources are spending time. So it looks the same every time. Obviously, the information updates. I don't know if there is plans to make it more dynamic, right? So as you maybe update things, or you can tell it that you want something different. Today, it's just kind of standard. It just pulls the information in for you. But yes, to answer your question, obviously you don't want to have those profitable numbers shared with your client. That's why there are two separate status reports.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ashley. Unless anybody else has anything else to ask Ashley, or comments to talk about this topic, I think we're going to look next at the next implementation tool. Joe, are you ready? Are you there?
I am. I thought I was third on the docket.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Tanya had some technical difficulties. Yes, thank you, Ashley. And yeah, so you're up next. The balance of the time are 15, 20 minutes.
Excellent. All right. So I hit share.
You're all good. I can see it.
You can see it. Okay, that's weird. I can't see it. All right. So hello, everybody. Thanks to Nancy, Vanda, and Tanya for all their leadership within the Doug community and for inviting me to speak today. So quick introduction. My name, as the slide says, is Joseph Thomas. I'm a member of Microsoft's FastTrack team for about the past 3 years, specifically working with Dynamics Customer Service and all of its tangential elements. I've been working with Dynamics for about 18 years, and man, that sounds scary when I say it out loud. I'm not one of the longest tenured Dynamics folks, as my first project was a migration from version 1.2 to 3. So for most of those 18 years, I was a solution architect in the partner channel, doing implementation. So that's just a little bit about me and who I am. So today's agenda will include just a quick overview of what FastTrack is, in case anybody doesn't know, and we're going to focus on the FastTrack implementation portal for Dynamics implementations and some of the updates. And lastly, I'll run through my top 5 favorite and useful Wave 2 features coming that may not be included in everyone's top 5 list and may not be considered sexy, but I absolutely love them. So hopefully we're going to go good here. All right, so the next slide. So quickly, FastTrack, if you don't know, is part of our engineering org here within Microsoft. We have access to and work every day with the people who actually build this stuff. Our job is to review and validate your design, provide guidance along the way based on best practices, basically to avoid common pitfalls, which ultimately help you go live with confidence, as you can see on the slide there. And in the end, help increase user adoption. That's kind of our ultimate goal here. But if I were to boil down our role to one item that is the most important, it is to mitigate risk, plain and simple. One other key point on this slide is that we are of no cost to you as a customer or you as a partner. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So there are usually a lot of different specialized people involved in your product. In particular, from the customer's perspective, this can be overwhelming and confusing. Depending on the engagement, as the customer, it's your job to ensure that all the correct people are involved and communicated to be able to provide the most accurate descriptions of what your new system needs to do to accelerate the business. So you're involved in overall program management, usually detailed project management, training, testing, documentation, and ultimately prepping yourself for taking ownership once your partner disengages. So your partner is there quite simply because they do this for a living, day in and day out, over and over again. And typically our customers don't have that expertise on hand at the time that they're doing the implementation. So they're there to provide their guidance, expertise, and leadership, and get you there quicker. And last but not least, your FastTrack representative. So we deliver a series of workshops. We provide guidance, albeit from a somewhat different perspective, collaboration, escalation if necessary, and a whole other host of resources like tech talks, blogs, FastTrack community access, and things like that, which are ongoing. So I'll highlight one item here that I feel is important to say, and that is steering committee participation. So whether we like it or not, every project ends up having escalations. It's not personal. It's actually just good project governance. We require our FastTrack SAs to have a seat at that table to be able to provide our context in those meetings. And I promise to not bore you too much longer. So one of the most common questions we get is basically, how do I qualify to have a FastTrack architect on your project? And so here are the criteria. You guys can read that. I won't read it out to you. Now, you didn't hear this from me, but like everything in life, there are sometimes exceptions. So for example, if your spend is, $375,000 versus $400,000, but you meet every other factor, it doesn't cost a thing to apply. My only suggestion there is that within the nomination process, highlight something amazing or cool about your project that'll help convince the powers that be to make that exception. At the end of the day, we do only have so much capacity, but we would rather have more nominations than less. So my 2 cents is give it a whirl. If you're sort of in the range, it's worth a shot. Okay, and so I mentioned it earlier that your FastTrack architect is of no additional cost. Well, this is kind of our payback. So once you've gone live and you love it, we ask that you share that good news. And we have a bunch of different ways to do this through Gartner and Forrester surveys. We have an entire customer success story process. You can produce advocacy videos, or you can sign up to attend at any number of conferences, as I'm sure you're all aware of. And lastly, you can sign up to be a reference customer so that our future customers can call you and have a one-on-one unmoderated call with our current customers, which I think is really powerful. So in addition to that, we take your product feedback, and this is what engineering uses to make product decisions on our roadmap. And to me, this is my favorite part of the job, because, you know, this is real end users. These are real customers making real decisions, not us egghead engineers in the basement trying to figure out what we should and should not do. We get this feedback directly from your implementations. So in the end, everyone benefits. So onward and upward to talk about the FastTrack implementation portal. So now let's pretend you've submitted and been approved for a FastTrack project, and you're about to kick off your project. So your FastTrack architect will do the machinery behind the scenes in our FastTrack Dynamics environment, and give the appropriate team members access to your FastTrack project portal. This is going to be the central access point for all the stakeholders to share and keep up to date with the latest project goings on. Now, I put this in here because quite often our customers don't just have one project going on. So if you have multiple projects going on, this is a one-stop shop for your team. So why might you have multiple FastTrack projects overlapping? Well, for example, I have a couple of customers who are doing this at the moment. One completed their Dynamics customer service implementation in July. I continue to work with them on their phase 2 items, where they're going to hopefully roll out voice and some additional omni-channel features and some Copilot Studio IVR stuff. But just about 3 weeks ago, they also kicked off, which is a separate sort of group of folks, a dynamic sales project. So there's definitely overlap, and we don't need to recreate the wheel for everything. But, you know, because there are different requirements for customer service versus sales that may or may not align with out-of-the-box features, it's very relevant to go through the solution blueprint review process for both projects and do our reviews independently. Anyway, the point is all of that can be here. So when you click into one of those specific projects, you have a window into our FastTrack Dynamics system and a lot of the key project details, as well as that current status description, which we update. The data you see here are the key metrics that we use internally to report up the status and the details of your project. So for example, if the go live date changed, that triggers several steps on our end to do a deeper dive as to, you know, what happened there. Or if your project goes into a red status, this is reported up our chain of command, so that if additional resources are needed, we have the mechanisms in place to do so. And most importantly, no one's surprised by escalations. You know, my motto is bad news does not age like wine. So the more people know about it, the sooner the better off you are. And this is a sort of one mechanism to help do that. So as a part of FastTrack, there are a series of workshops that we have, which I'll just touch on in a few minutes. So these are comprehensive, I'll call them questionnaires, but that's not totally accurate, that are completed jointly between your FastTrack architect, by you, the customer, and by your partner. And they're based on your project ongoing requirements, design, testing, and all the other details that are associated with the project. Each of those reviews and the question sets that are relevant to your specific implementation are available for review now in the portal. And this is a great way for everyone to keep these items updated in real time. And So just diving just a tad bit deeper here, within these reviews, there are different sections based on what features and functionality you're implementing, multiple questions within that section. And so when you click on an individual item, you can see the details about your specific scenario, as well as the Microsoft FastTrack recommendation there. So these recommendations can range from your team's doing a great job with project management and communication to we strongly recommend you not deploy 175 business rules and 80 different individual pieces of JavaScript on your opportunity form. And by the way, that last one was a real conversation I recently had with one of my customers. So those are the kind of things we're there to provide kind of a different perspective and possibly some different alternatives along the way. And this way, as we make tweaks, if we make a recommendation and, the team decides to pivot, it's all documented. We can have that centrally. So let me take a moment to, I mentioned just a moment ago, the solution blueprint review. So this is the single most critical item in your FastTrack engagement. So the SBR, it's just an end-to-end review of every item that should be considered to achieve a successful, on time, on budget Dynamics project. So because we are not a part of the hours and hours of requirements, design, and planning meetings that you as a customer and your partner have, this is our opportunity to learn the details of your implementation. I can't tell you how many times, I'll get a question on day 2, how do we implement this? And my answer is always the same. Well, there's a million ways to implement this. Let's talk about what what the business needs, what the requirements are, and then let's have that discussion because it's all contextual. So the ultimate goal is not for quote unquote Microsoft to sign off on your work like your 6th grade teacher. Our goal is quite simply to help reduce risk. So every project has risks, and those risks can take on different forms. One project may have no executive sponsorship and poor communication, while another project may have 150 business rules and 80 pieces of JavaScript. So our team has an average of about 10 years experience, some of us more than that, leading these implementations. And so it's pretty likely that we've seen it all. I like to think of us as being embedded with the troops. In other words, you and your partner's project team. The projects where we become part of the project team are the ones that yield the most benefit. And that comes with trust at the end of the day, that we're not there. Our goal is not to look over your shoulder. Our goal is to be part of the team and help drive things to the end. So I'm going to skip over this because I feel like I'm running a little bit long, but this is just some example topic areas and things that are included within the solution blueprint review. We try and touch on all aspects of the implementation. And then just the one thing I guess I'll say here is that as we go through the master solution blueprint review, let's say your project is very integration heavy. We have a separate integration strategy workshop where we do a deeper dive into that particular element. Not every project has that, so we don't have to do that on every project. And so for most of these items here, there's a separate workshop if we need to dive deeper into those items. All right, so I'll just take a pause for a second. Does anyone have any FastTrack questions, portal questions?
I have a question, if that's okay. It's around like the documentation of this. We run really agile projects, which means that like the documentation is in Azure DevOps rather than like being written down in like a Word doc, or I'm guessing there's some sort of template, right, for this SBR. Like how does this process work with that type of process, or is it the requirement that we would then need to fill in that additional documentation? I'm just curious how that works together.
Yeah, that is a great question. In fact, I'm going to write that down and steal that and add it to my next presentation because I do get asked that a lot. So you're right. The SBR template is it's a PowerPoint template, but what I say to my customers are, if I send you this template and you're creating a significant portion of the information that's asked in this template from scratch, something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We don't expect that. We pray actually that is not the case. So really the SBR should not be a heavy lift. I candidly, I don't care. Like if you can spit out your DevOps, sprint items into a spreadsheet and copy and paste that into the thing.
Okay.
We're not particular about that. For us, the key thing is, between the partner and the customer. Exactly. That you've had the discussion. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It never fails. My guess is you asked that question, so this does not apply to you, but it never fails to amaze me. Things that I think some of us who have been around this space a little bit longer see as sort of obvious, like good project governance. It's sometimes something that just kind of gets glazed over. Project communication, I think project communication is always an issue, and should be, it's one of the biggest contributors to failures, in my opinion. But, those things just have to be talked about. And, whether you're doing old school, requirements, documentation, fine, copy and paste that in. If it's a sprint related scenario, fine. In the program strategy, we're going to discuss, your phase 0. We're going to discuss, what happens if something takes longer than it should and things get bumped out of sprint 1 to sprint 2. How does that affect your go live? Those kind of things. So the long answer to your short question, I think we're pretty flexible in that regard.
Okay. It wasn't a short question. I mean, it's but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a short question. It's not an easy one to answer because every project is different as well, right? Like no project runs the same every time. And so I think that just knowing, what the expectation is from Microsoft on FastTrack, because I've done a couple of these fast-tracked projects and it's not always the same. I mean, right, the documentation and how you interact is similar, but I mean, no project's the same. So
totally. And candidly, like, I mean, we all come from sort of different experience levels. We have a lot of FastTrack folks who were, Dynamics administrators for a customer. Mm-hmm. They were partner people. So there's a lot of different perspectives, which I think is awesome because I learn something new every single day. I tend to be kind of a less formal person. So I don't get hung up on the documentation necessarily. If I get, if the documentation's there and I get the sense that, hey, your project manager has their SHIT together, then we don't need to go into super great detail, right? If mm-hmm. You can kind of get a sense for those things.
Can I actually add into that then, Joseph? Because I'm working at the moment with your colleague Vanya, and she's actually provided us with not the solution blueprint document to work off, but documentation which she and I think another colleague of hers have put together, which is app specific. So it's almost like a condensed version of the solution blueprint, specifically for the sales app and specifically for the customer insights journeys apps.
Yes.
And I found those two documents much easier to actually manage and work with than the more detailed actual solution blueprint review template.
100%. And we have that for, I'm kind of in the customer service omni-channel area. And so we have a specific SBR for that. Yeah, we have one for that as well. And that's kind of where we were headed. It used to be just one generic thing, but I mean, the product's kind of evolved to where there are some fundamentally different things, in customer service.
It's really good to know that you have one for like customer service and omni-channel as well, because I think it would really be a great move forward if instead of having just one generic like blueprint document, because you know, like Ashley said, you know, different projects are completely different, particularly between different apps. So
totally.
if it could be, you know, some sort of progression that we could actually see towards something which was a little bit more app specific, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah,
it's sorry if I can interrupt just 1 second. It might help upskill people too. I mean, I'm trying to get my practice built around, like, you guys need to start specializing, kind of like ERP. They're a little bit more specialty focused. Our world in CRM is getting so big that our consultants on the ground need to figure out how to focus on all the great new features that are coming out to be able to have those great customer discussions. And this, having an SBR that's focused on a particular area of the app, I think could really help the consultant on the.
And especially as, like, you know, if you think about the way that the partner area actually works, where, you know, you're expected to obtain solution accreditation in specific, you know, app areas, like in sales, like in customer service. So to align to the way that Microsoft actually assesses us as well.
Yeah,
I'd encourage you to look as well at the solution or the business process catalog as well. I mean, it's very probably well adopted on the ERP side, not so much on the CRM side. And I think it's really where we need to go to help our consultants in CRM truly leverage the first party features as much as possible and get them out of the XRM mentality, where we build, which only, you know, adds more risk to projects in the end.
Yeah, I think that on the catalogs front, you've got a very, very strong leads on Microsoft's part, on the product owners who have pushed through, you know, the development of the product catalog on the ERP side. We need to see the same on the CRM side, definitely.
Yeah, I think Joe, we should try to get Rachel Profit on here as well to talk.
Rachel, yes, I was desperately trying to remember Rachel's name.
She is, yes. I'm working with her on some business process catalog stuff. Because
we're trying to,
it's,
we're
you
trying
know,
to help her
it's
with service a little bit too. Yeah.
Because, you know, it's funny you mentioned the ERP stuff, because, I mean, to me, there are two different types of people on this planet. There are people who could be an ERP consultant or developer, and there's people who can be a CRM consultant and developer. And I don't think you can take CRM people like myself and make them into ERP, because it's just too rigid for me. And to Nancy's,
that.
you know what I mean? Like,
I've come the other way.
Yes.
ERP and I've gone to CRM.
Yes, you can do that. I've seen that, and I think that those folks are extremely good at that. I know I would be absolutely terrible as an ERP consultant. My wife is an accounting background, and she would be a perfect ERP consultant. But, you know, CRM has kind of been the Wild West, to your point, Nancy, the XRM piece, and we are headed more in a more structured environment, which is, you know, I think Sharon, that was you that was talking about the more structured things. I mean, you know, in the customer service area, you know, a full-blown omni-channel implementation is much more complex than the old case management, right? You can have things like voice, you can have different connectors, utilizing Copilot Studio for your bots, for your IVRs.
You've got your CSAS as well now, your contact center as a service. There's a standalone service.
Right, so that there's all these pieces and parts. So we have an omni-channel one, and then even sort of more granular than that, we have a Copilot Studio one that talks about that, you know, whether you're doing bots, whether you're doing, you know, kind of an IVR with the nuanced pieces.
Will your Copilot Studio one then get extended out for the new autonomous agents as well?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful.
We're a little, we were all like, I mentioned earlier that, you know, there's only so many of us. And so that's kind of why the criteria. So, like, you know, as with most organizations, keeping up with this stuff is, we're a little bit more behind, I think, than we would want to be, but everyone gets it. And so it becomes kind of a swarming group effort to specify these things as it gets more specific. So great questions.
I have another question, if that's okay, about how you match FastTrack architects. Is it architect? I want to make sure I'm using the right word with your customers, because I'm guessing it comes from the customer, or I don't know if it comes from the customer or the partner, but is it just who's available? Is it skill set, personality? Like, how do you match the right people?
It is as much of an art as it is a science. So, and it does, there's no hard and fast rules there. But here are the things that are taken into consideration. Definitely the area of expertise. I mean, we have a couple folks. So I'm in the customer service, which includes field service. I haven't done a field service implementation in probably since before the pandemic, right? So I'm outdated, and most of my stuff has been customer service. So, and we have some folks who have been in field service and actually helped develop the original thing, right? So if it's primarily a field service project, it's going to go to somebody who, sort of specializes in that. Now, I have a lot of hybrid customer service and sales projects. And I mean, it's hard enough for me to keep up with the customer service pieces and parts, let alone the sales pieces and parts as well. So what we'll do is on 2 of my projects, I'm still running all of this SBR stuff, but I have kind of a backup who is on the sales team. And I'm the backup for an insights implementation that's also sort of doing customer service. So I'm their backup to do the omni-channel piece. So we'll team it up. We have some superstars who can, I don't know, they know everything. And so they wouldn't need that. But even if you don't see the name of the person who, might be the sales quote unquote expert, in all likelihood, they're helping behind the scenes, provide that information.
Yeah.
So it is largely skill-based rather than finding a personality match or things like that. Okay. I was just curious how it worked. Yep. So, okay, cool.
Just one final.
We're over.
We're gonna have to save your favorite 5 topics for next time, and I'll let Sharon get to her question. Just wanted to put on the screen if you want to hear more from Joe. He's actually come back to our December 5th session that's coming up in a few weeks, because we're going to talk about designing and deploying. So, these sessions, we're trying to pick areas of the development lifecycle of implementations to sort of highlight various aspects of how you deploy the product. So next time we're together, we're going to talk about different things you need to think about when you're designing, like what are settings, how do you pick and choose which one, and how do you go successfully live with them. And that's something Joe is going to be sharing with us. So just wanted to get that out there before people start dropping. Sharon, back to you on your question. Love the conversation.
Wonderful. Now, I mean, it actually might be something either for the next meeting or the meeting up afterwards, because Joe, I'm working with Paul Murray, and we've just applied for the FastTrack Portfolio Partner program. So I think that would be, a presentation on that into the Doug Meetup, I think would be very valuable.
That's fantastic. Paul's a magician. I don't know if you know that.
I know. I say he's at the moment he's holidaying and then he's on business trip. So I've got obviously we're working with a colleague of his who's backfilling. But yeah, absolutely amazing.
He's quite the character. Yeah, we did. I didn't want to dive too much into that, but we had, look, not all partners are created equal, if I'm being honest. And I mentioned earlier, it stuns me sometimes what goes on. And it doesn't mean small versus large. Like, there's ineptitude everywhere. And so we've taken steps to help upskill our partners as a part of that certification process. And look, I get it. I was in the partnership. I managed teams. I was responsible for hiring and sometimes firing consultants. It's difficult. It's a difficult job. It's extraordinarily stressful and extraordinarily time consuming, and finding good people is difficult. So, you know, I see partners making not great choices with who's leading projects and things like that. And so that's a concerted effort to help upskill the partner network, get them certified, and you know, just make everyone's life easier.
Yeah,
but that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a great one for a future a future Doug meetup, definitely.
Cool. Yeah, so I think time is up. I appreciate everybody for being here today. Come back on camera for a second. Please tell your friends and family. You know, we're trying to drive attendance to these sessions. We're going to be more transparent about and more planful around the sessions. We're going to be, you know, good project managers and actually, you know, start planning things well in advance. So if you have topic ideas, we have a nice little spreadsheet of the different topics. We're kind of focusing here in the near term on service related topics. That's a bit of my specialty around customer service and field service. And then Tanya's going to I think probably March-ish, we're going to start switching into like sales and marketing type topics. Again, all with a backdrop on the systems development lifecycle. Like we want to talk about automated testing and quality and deployments and more about design and project management. So that's the plan as we go into next year. Did you want to add something, Tanya, in the last minute here? You managed to get your computer back up? Oh, yeah, you're not. We can't hear you.
No, then.
We can't hear it, but I'd just probably just mention, Nancy, we've got a link to the next meetup and also a link for any feedback, any topics that you as attendees would like us to cover or start to work on over the coming months. We certainly appreciate your feedback.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will share the recording with the Doug organizers, and they will post it for us. So thanks again for your attendance. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.